Will PC owners forgive Microsoft's efforts to trick them into installing Windows 10?
And will Pebble's new smart devices entice you? Welcome to Vertical Hold, the tech show where we channel surf through the headlines in search of the big picture. I'm Alex Kidman, and I'm here with a man who can accurately lay claim to being Australia's top technical journalist, Adam Turner. Adam, you see, won the 2015 IT Journalism Award for being the best technical journalist, but naturally, he's too classy to bring attention to it. So instead, I will. Congratulations, Adam!
Thank you very much.
Now, what's new in tech?
Bendable smartphones are on the way, with little-known Chinese startup Moxie Group promising monochrome displays later this year, which lie flat like a traditional smartphone or roll up to curl around your wrist. The touchscreen display is based on e-ink technology, similar to that used in e-book readers like Amazon's Kindle.
Spotify has radically cut the pricing on its family plans down to $17.99 a month in Australia for up to 6 people. Technically speaking, they're meant to be members of your family because it's a family plan, but it's not as though Spotify specifically wanders around checking such matters to speak of.
If you haven't used LinkedIn for a while, you might want to change your password, with the business-focused social networking service revealing that data stolen in 2012 was recently made available online. Email addresses, passwords and other sensitive data has been found for sale in the dark web.
Twitter is set to relax the rules around its 140 character limit, making the names of those you reply to, as well as any images or other attachments, not count towards your limit. You'll also be able to retweet yourself, ideal for narcissists and brands everywhere. Twitter hasn't specified an exact timeline for these changes, but it's expected to roll them out one at a time.
So, Alex, Twitter's getting a little bit more lax with how many things you can squeeze into a tweet. Is this a good or bad thing?
It's a mix of both, I think. The idea that you could have multiple names in there and that not count to 140 characters, that's super smart. I can't see anyone having a problem with that, because if you've ever gotten involved in a Twitter discussion where more than 2 or 3 people you just end up going, this, that, frog, no, but, or you have to slice someone out. It's just, it's chaos.
Yeah.
That doesn't work. I'm a little warier about the pictures thing. Not that a good image can't enhance a tweet, but once it's easy and there's no cost in doing so, I think we'll see a lot more Twitter feeds clogged up with a lot more images. Yeah, with just a flood of images and polls and things like that. So that's maybe wait and see, and I suppose that depends on how the user base uses or abuses it. I guess the same is true for this whole idea that you can retweet yourself.
Yeah, that's. Couldn't you already retweet yourself, or is that just me? I thought it was possible to retweet yourself.
No. If you retweet an exact tweet that your own account has done, then it will say, no, you've already tweeted that. You can't do that.
Oh, okay.
But this will make it possible to do that.
Yeah.
I think it's not. I get why they want to do it as well, because it also works well with the brands that they want to attract as advertisers, who may well just want to have scheduled stuff that goes up. Yeah. The issue is, of course, it takes away from that organic nature of Twitter, and there's a lot of research that says that actually the stuff people engage with is the stuff that's real, the stuff that's organic. So even if you've actually got something that you want to retweet, because, yes, when you tweet something, perhaps a couple of hours later, it genuinely has fallen out of everyone's little groups, lists, and feed, and nobody's seeing it. Generally speaking, you are actually better off stating the same thing in a different
way. Different way, yeah.
Yeah, instead of saying, hey, I wrote this great column, you say, hey, I wrote this superb column.
Yes.
And, and it goes from there. Yeah. That, I think, is a little better than just simply being able to mechanically retweet, because as soon as you can do that, it opens up immense possibilities, not just for narcissism, but for brand spamming, even potentially for kind of the abusive and illegal behaviour that we've seen associated with certain online hate groups and things like that, because they could just flood Twitter with that kind of stuff if they're allowed to do that.
I think that they've done well, though, to keep that 140 character limit, even though they've got exceptions now. To let it blow out and say you can have 1,000 characters or however many characters would have just killed it. It would have just turned it into a poor man's Facebook.
It'd destroy the brevity of the whole experience.
The whole point of Twitter is brevity. So But I do get frustrated sometimes that, I know I will retweet stories that I've written, and I'm pretty sure they get more traffic if I put a photo. I catch people's eye if I put an image in there as well. But then I've got to cut down what I can say about the story and explain what it is, because I've got to make room for the image, also the link to the story. So to be able to do that and just cram in that little bit more, I think for me will be really useful without going so far that you've let people put War and Peace up on Twitter. So I think they've actually taken kind of a smart middle ground to make Twitter more user-friendly, but still keep it basically Twitter.
So, Adam, the time frame in which you can get free Windows is fast expiring. It's the end of July, but Microsoft's actually being a little bit pushier than a lot of folk would like about this, aren't they?
Yeah, pushy's not the word for it. Microsoft are bastards, and they've just really upped it a notch at the moment.
Improved bastardry, basically.
Yes, improved bastardry.
So what's happening?
Well, Windows 10, as you say, has been out for almost a year. And as of, I think, the end of June or the end of July, it will no longer be a free upgrade. And it looks like it'll cost about $100 or so. So if you own a Windows computer, without doubt, you've been nagged over the last 12 months. Hey, we've got Windows 10. Do you want to install Windows 10? Did I mention that we have Windows 10? Do you want some toast? That kind of thing. So you've then had to decide whether or not you want Windows 10. And while it's got some good things going for it...
You don't seem to have installed Windows 10 yet.
Yes,
sure you'd like
exactly.
to install Windows 10.
How about a crumpet? There reaches a point where you might say, well, no, I don't want to put it on this old computer. Or, no, I don't want to install it here because I'm using some other device or some other software that's not going to work with Windows 10. So you say...
Or we're running a nuclear power plant here, you morons. Go away!
Exactly. So Microsoft has got more and more pushy. And not just pushy, but deceptive. Basically, what they've done most recently is pretty much straight out of the malware playbook. They've done things like, instead of saying, do you want Windows 10, yes or no, it's, do you want Windows 10 now or later? So there's no option to say no. So what people figured out is the way to get rid of that was to click the little X up in the corner of the pop-up and just make it go away without choosing anything. So
classically closing a program behaviour that we've all been taught to do by user interfaces for years now, especially Windows ones.
And that's been working perfectly fine. Up until, I think, this week, Microsoft decided to change the way that pop-up worked. It looked pretty much the same. But if you now clicked the window to make it go away, you're actually saying, yes, I do want Windows 10. If you didn't want Windows 10, you actually had to read the pop-up clearly and click the little bit that said click here to say I maybe don't want it. So all of these people who've just got into the habit every day of saying piss off Windows 10 and clicking this little arrow, got up, said piss off Windows 10, clicked the little arrow, went to get themselves a coffee, came back and Windows 10 was on their computer. And as you can imagine, they're not very happy. I've heard businesses that have been complaining about it. Lots of my friends have been complaining about it. Microsoft just has no respect for its users. It's tricky. They're acting like 2-bit con men. They're tricking people outright into installing something that they clearly don't want, because if they did, they would have clicked the button that said give me Windows 10.
Yeah, look, I think this is very, very shady behaviour.
Even for Microsoft, it's bad.
I'm not a lawyer, I suppose I should state that, but I wonder about the legal applicability of it. Now, admittedly, you can roll back, but apparently, as we know with Windows rollbacks, that doesn't always go all that well.
I've heard people say it doesn't always go to plan. You can say no during the installation process, and after it's done, you can dig in the menus to find a rollback option within the first 30 days. But
that's if you catch it updating as well, because my understanding is now as well, if you've got automatic updates on, which for security reasons you really should have, it's also pushing the update. If you've got automatic
updates on, you've probably already been screwed by Windows 10. It's probably already there. The only way to get rid of it so far has been to turn automatic updates off. If you really don't want this thing, the best thing to do is to look for a tool called Never 10. So Never 10. And it's not even a piece of software, it's just a thing you run on your computer that changes a few settings in the registry that make sure that you will never ever get Windows 10 and you get rid of that stupid pop-up. This is the kind of thing you need to do if you don't want Windows 10, because if this is what Microsoft's doing this week, imagine what the hell they're going to do next week, or the week before that deadline runs out.
Nice looking computer you got here. Shame if anything happened to it. By the way, would you like Windows 10?
So Grasshopper, there's a new Pebble out. What are we talking about here?
Well, this is not just one Pebble. It's an entire Zen garden of Pebbles. There's 3 new Pebbles, which are not quite out yet, but will be by the end of the year.
All right, for people playing along at home, what the hell's a Pebble?
Okay, so Pebble was the first brand to really push the idea of smartwatches. Mm-hmm. They launched a couple of years ago via a very successful, in fact, at the time, the most successful Kickstarter of all time for a smartwatch with an e-ink display. That's the same kind of display you get on an Amazon Kindle, but in a watch form factor. So the battery life was superb, and it would do notifications and music, and there would be promises of apps and so on. And that very first Pebble was delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed, and an awful lot of people thought, ooh, okay, have we done our dough here? Because as always with Kickstarter, you're not actually buying a product. You are buying the best effort to make that product.
You pays your money, you takes your chances.
Absolutely.
Is that how
they can still fail, and as long as they're not actually sitting in the Bahamas sipping cocktails in an obvious fashion, you really don't have much.
Sitting on a beach making 20%.
Exactly. Fast forward a few years, and they've had quite a number of smartwatches under the Pebble brand. The three latest devices they've announced, only two of which are in fact smartwatches, the Pebble 2, the Pebble Time 2, and the Pebble Core. Now, the Pebble 2 and the Time 2 are essentially upgraded Pebble smartwatches, so they've got better battery life. They've now got heart rate monitors for advanced fitness tracking. They've got the advantage that not a lot of smartwatches have, that they are waterproof. They work across Android and iOS. And, critically, they're relatively inexpensive. In this case, for the Kickstarter, it's off the top of my head, it's around $100. It's $100 US for the baseline Pebble 2, which is the monochrome e-ink Pebble, and $130, I think it is, for the Time 2, which is the colour one. Although, interestingly, the colour e-ink Pebble has a bigger battery in it. They actually claim that it'll get up to 10 days battery life, where the e-ink will get 7. But when you compare that against like an Apple Watch,
which is a hell of a lot more expensive,
or any Android Wear device, where typically you might get into a second day if you're lucky, but more than 2 is all but impossible. There's something to be said there. And I find this space really interesting because I like smartwatches. I wear a smartwatch because I wear a watch. I'm kind of OCD about this stuff. But the battery charging thing is a big thing for me. I like the idea of, right, look, I just charge it once a week and then I don't have to stress about it. It's not going to run out on me in the middle of the day. But Pebble also does the same thing that everyone else's smartwatches do well, which is notifications. It's basically is that phone buzzing in my pocket because I've got a vital email message that I need to know about, or is it just some piece of junk spam from Microsoft asking me if I'd like to install Windows 10 again? And that's really super handy, but everyone does that. The thing is, apart from that, and possibly, depending on your usage model, the incoming payment stuff, so Apple Pay through an Apple Watch, for example, I admit there is a case there, and if you like that stuff, that's great. Go nuts. I'm perfectly happy to pull out a card or a phone from my pocket to pay for stuff. But if you like paying for it with your watch, it's another way to do it. I'm not disparaging that. But apart from that, no one's really come up with that kind of killer extra app for smartwatches to have. Pebble are basically keeping it simple again, and there's nothing wrong with that, and it's a great entry-level way to get into it.
I think the killer app maybe for a smartwatch is not to be too expensive, because then you don't have to worry so much about having a killer app. At these kind of prices and the fact that it'll work with Android and iOS, so maybe go, I'll dip my toe in. But for something that's a hell of a lot more expensive, like an Apple or an Android device, it's like, I really need a good reason to spend that kind of money.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, they've got an even cheaper option, the Pebble Core, which isn't even a smartwatch. It's a little blob of plastic and silicon with which can take a SIM card. And the idea is that it does GPS tracking. It'll stream Spotify to Bluetooth headphones. You take it out when you go for a run, but they're also offering a hackable version. Ooh. The idea being that people will build an ecosystem around it. Now,
could you put it in the base of your shoe, Max?
Well, maybe. Maybe. Except that it can't make phone calls. It can send out a little SOS SMS.
Missed it by that much.
That much. Yeah, that much. But yeah, whether or not they'll actually get an ecosystem out of this, I don't know. There have been all sorts of attempts for this. The Ouya game console is a good example of something where they said, we'll get all the developers in and they'll build all the stuff, and it just didn't happen.
Yes.
And I suspect the Pebble Core will go this way. The watches, maybe not. There is one thing, however, that Pebble's done this time around, which actually has annoyed me.
Okay, here we go.
And that's the fact that they're still using Kickstarter. Now, when they launched, no problem. They were a fresh, brand new product, and as evidenced by the fact that it took them absolutely forever to get those first Kickstarter-backed Pebbles out. they really had to learn as they went along, and it took them a lot longer and cost them a fair amount more of their money. But in this case, they're using Kickstarter like a store. The day they announced this, they were 5 times over their target for this. And whilst, yes, they could still fall back on the, oh, well, it actually took longer to do or whatever, we're not delivering these. They could do that. They could back out of it. They're basically just using Kickstarter as a storefront, and that's not what Kickstarter's meant to be there for. They are an exact example of a brand that should not be doing this, at least for the watchers. But maybe the Pebble Core, because it's a bit more experimental. But even so, it's the functional equivalent of Microsoft coming along and saying, oh, we've got this idea for a games console. Let's launch it on Kickstarter. But everyone would turn their noses up at that. And, this feels like poor play against projects on Kickstarter, which actually probably do deserve the focus and the attention because they're actually genuinely new ideas, and this is what Kickstarter is.
So what's your problem with that? Is it because it's taking the attention away from others, or because it's introducing the perhaps small risk here that you might do your dough? Why? I understand why they don't sort of fit in with that Kickstarter ethos anymore, but what's the actual harm in them being there?
I think, well, 2 things. One, it doesn't fit into the ethos, which means it's taking the focus away from other potentially useful projects. And to be fair and honest, there's a lot of junk on Kickstarter.
Oh, yeah.
You got to do a lot of sifting.
Oh, yeah.
It's also, though, there is this public perception that when you back something on Kickstarter, you've bought it. You deserve that product.
Yeah.
You actually don't.
No. You might deserve it, but you haven't bought it.
Yeah. There is a risk associated with that investment.
Yeah.
And a number of prominent Kickstarter projects have failed.
Yeah.
A number have got up. I think Pebble are beyond the stage where they need that kind of funding to actually operate.
Yeah.
And they can probably just do it by themselves, and I don't know why they're not. I think they're using Kickstarter essentially as both a storefront and an advertising medium, and I think it's a poor use of the form. That's my objection to it. Having said that, I probably will buy one because I like smartwatches so much and I'm a sucker for them.
I think there's still one small spot left on your arm where you could wrap another one on.
Yeah, well, if I just peel away a couple of the Android Wear ones and maybe strap that Pebble on top of the existing Pebble, yeah, I think that could work. Well, that just about wraps it up for another episode of Vertical Hold. Remember, if you've got any comments, hit us up in the comments section on YouTube, via Twitter, or the Facebook Vertical Hold page.
Thanks for joining us. Remember, if you like what you hear, hit that subscribe button.